Cannabis is one of the newer investment ideas we have, and ideas around the ESG impact of cannabis are fluid and developing, especially with the entry of alcohol and tobacco majors in the space and the use of medical marijuana. Morningstar analyst Kristoffer Inton is here to discuss his views. Chris, do you see established businesses, alcohol, soft drinks, pharmacy chains, healthcare, and tobacco, for example, continuing to make M&A moves in cannabis?
Definitely. I think that Aurora Cannabis definitely is probably the one that's the most actionable. It's one of the largest Canadian cannabis producers, and it's the one that doesn't have a strategic partner, although they're actively looking for one. And so I think that there's definitely probably interest in from other sectors for Aurora and other Canadian and for other cannabis companies.
With the entry of pharmacy companies trying to find alternatives in medicine through cannabis, and also companies like alcohol and tobacco in this space, there seems to be an interesting dichotomy from the sector, especially from an ESG point of view. Where do you stand on this?
It's tough for us to say at this point. I think that both views are somewhat valid, I think, from an ESG perspective, particularly focused on the social aspect. On one hand, cannabis can be viewed as very helpful. It's considered to be great for pain relief and especially helpful to cancer patients and others who struggle with pain or other symptoms like that. And so from that view, it's very beneficial. But the counter view is likely that, it's similar to alcohol or tobacco. It's a quote-unquote vice. And so, from that perspective, adding another opportunity for people to indulge in a vice, is that bad from a social perspective? Maybe. I think that both views are somewhat valid, and I think there's probably the answer is somewhere in between.
Finally, where do you see the most growth, medicinal or recreational?
Definitely the recreational side. I think that the number of addressable users, the potential people that would potentially consume recreational cannabis, is just far larger than the medical population that would consider using cannabis. And so I think that even though that your typical recreational user is probably consumes cannabis with less intensity than a medical consumer would, there's just far more people in the recreational market.
Thank you, Chris. Tomorrow we'll look at the stocks that Chris covers and talk about why he likes them. For Morningstar, I'm Ruth Saldana.